I've been learning Bash and Microsoft Azure for a couple of weeks now, and I have created this script which will create the resource groups on Azure and also deploy a VM on the resource group. So let's look at the script, and let's start from the bottom. I have created different functions which can display resource groups, check resource groups, and create resource groups, show the regions, and display available VM images, create VM, display what you have created, and then at the end connect to the VM. So let's start from the beginning. With check resource group, I use a while loop, which will ask you the name of the resource group that you want to create. It will then check if the resource group exists on your Azure resource group. If it does, it will then ask you to provide a new name. If not, it breaks the while loop. Now, show region is quite simple. It shows the available Azure Data Center regions in your create resource group. First of all, I use a variable named regions and store the available data center regions in that variable. Then I use an until loop. Now, until with a condition, then do something. So until valid location equals true, do this. So first of all, I set that the valid location to false, and then until the valid location becomes true, do this. This loop will ask you which region would you like to create your resource group in. Then it's going to compare the regions and the region that you have input. If it's equal, valid location becomes true, and it's going to create the resource group for you. And then this will break the until loop because we have changed the valid location to true. If not, it's going to say the region that you have input is not a valid Azure Data Center region. Then it's going to continue this loop. With the display resource group, this is a simple one as well. It just shows you your current available resource groups. And it's going to list out the resource groups that you have. Now with the display VM images function, it's going to say displaying latest VM images available in Azure. This is the Azure CLI command that I use to display the name of the images and the version and output as a table. Then it's going to ask you which VM image would you like to use. Now with the create VM function, it will continue to ask you what is the computer name and what is the username. And then this Azure CLI command will then create the VM for you. After that, it's going to display the VM, or it's going to display the available VM that you have in your subscription. The last function is connect to VM. Now to connect to VM, we need to use the SSH command and the username and the public IP. To get the public IP, this is the Azure CLI command I use to get the public IP and store it into the public IP variable. Okay, so that's the last function. Now let's get this into action. So let's start a terminal so we can run the script. I have the script here, and let's run it to see it in action. Now the first function, display resource groups. This is a simple function which just shows you your current available resource groups and display your current available resource groups. And these are my current available resource groups. Then it moves on to the next function called check resource group. So this function is a while loop. While this is true, it will do this. So the first line is enter a name for your new resource group. If the new resource group name exists, then it's going to say resource group already exists, provide another name. If not, it breaks and move on to the next function. So let's give it a try. Let's say I want to create a new resource group called block-rg. It's going to check and it's going to say resource group block-rg already exists, provide another name. So I want to create a new resource group called hello world because the resource group name that you have input does not exist. So it breaks this while loop and move on to the next function. So what's after that? Next function is show regions. Show regions. So the first thing it's going to do is showing Azure data center regions in Europe. And this is the command line I've used to display Azure data center regions only in Europe. So as you can see, these are the data centers in Europe from Azure. Now after this function, it's going to go to the next, which is create resource group. This is the create resource group function. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to get a list of Azure data center regions and store it into the regions variable. Next, I use a until loop and condition and do. So until the valid location equal true, do the following. So first of all, I set the valid location to false. So until valid location equals to true, do the following. Now, it's going to ask you which region would you like to create your resource group and the name that you have input in and store it as a resource region variable. And it's going to compare if the regions equals to the resource region that you want to create, then it's going to turn the valid location to true and display a creating resource group in resource region. And then you will execute this Azure command line. If the compare of the region to the region that you want to create in is false, it's going to say the resource region is not a valid Azure Data Center region, and it's going to continue this loop. So let's give it a try. So let's say I would like to create this resource group in ABC region. It's going to say ABC is not a valid Azure Data Center region. Let's say I want to try BCD. Again, BCD is not a valid Azure Data Center region. So because I am based in UK, I am just going to create this resource group in UK South. So I'm going to say UK South. So let's have a look. Now it says creating resource group hello world in UK South. And it's going to display your current available resource group. So now this function is complete. Create resource group function is complete. The next is display resource group, which is exactly the same as the first function, which will simply display the current available resource group that you have. Then it's going to run the display VM image function. So this is the function. It's going to say displaying latest VM images available. And this is the Azure command line I use to display the available VM images and output as a table. So this is what you see. The available VM images and the version of the images. And it's going to ask you which VM image would you like to use. I'm going to choose Ubuntu 2204. And next, it's going to go into the function create VM, which is this. So once I press enter, now it's going to create VM function. It's going to ask you enter computer name for VM. Let's name it computer. Enter and enter username for computer. User 123. Once I press enter, it's going to create the VM using this Azure CLI command line. This will take a bit of time to create. While it's creating, let's continue to go through the functions. So once the create VM is finished, it's going to display the VM. Now in the display VM function, it's going to output available VM on Azure. And this is the command line, which will display the VM we have just created. And as you can see from below, available VM on Azure, the name of the VM, the resource group the VM is in, and the location of the VM. So once that is done, it's going to connect to the VM. So connect to the VM function. Now to connect to VM, you have to use SSH with the username and the public IP address. And this is the command line which can then extract the public IP address and store it in the public IP variable. So as you can see, the terminal is now asking, do you want to connect to the VM that we have just created? And there you go. We are now connected to the new VM that we have created on Azure, and everything's automatic. And to exit, we can simply type exit, and now we're back to the terminal. And that's the whole process of the script. See you next time.